Protected by 12-inch armour, they could be raised and lowered. In addition to these cupola, 4 other gun emplacements, each with 3 75mm cannon, had been built. 2 to fire north on the Maastricht bridges, and 2 facing south towards the bridges across the Meuse. Finally, there were 2 machine gun emplacements on top of the fortress, sited to cover the main guns. To penetrate the 12-inch armour of the 3 rotating cupolas, Witzig's men planned to use a revolutionary new weapon, the hollow charge explosive. Because of the need for total secrecy, during training, the men carried stone weights of similar dimensions, rather than the explosives themselves. 3 other groups, codenamed Steel, Concrete and Iron, would land near the bridges and capture them. During final training, it was emphasized that each team of Group Granite had to disable its target as quickly as possible, or the guns on the fortress would blow the vital bridges apart before the panzers could cross them. At 3:30 a.m. on the morning of the 10th of May, 42 Junkers Ju-52 transport aircraft took off from 2 airfields outside Cologne, towing gliders behind them. But as the aircraft, guided by searchlights, approached the River Rhine on the Dutch border, a tow rope to one of the gliders snapped. On board was Group Granite commander Witzig. He was told the glider would not be able to carry on to Aben-Amal by itself. He would have to land in Germany. The assault group would have to fly on without its leader. The remaining gliders were cast off while still over German territory, about 6 miles from the fortress. As dawn broke, they were spotted by Belgian anti-aircraft gunners on the fortress, but unable to identify them as definitely hostile, the men held their fire. The gliders swooped in towards their target. And at 4:25 a.m., the first came to a rough halt on top of the grassy roof of Aben-Amal. Others landed near the bridges along the canal. On Aben-Amal, the first section of Group Granite rushed towards one of the 75mm emplacements, covering the 3 Maastricht bridges, just as planned in the Special Forces training exercises. A hollow charge was placed on the observation dome. The fuse lit. 10 seconds later, it exploded. As the Belgian defenders scrambled to get to their battle stations, the first guns were disabled. A second section of paratroops now moved in on the other Maastricht emplacement. Grenades were thrown in, and again the guns disabled. Within a few minutes, only the 3 cupolas were left to threaten the northern bridges. Witzig's team was targeting the central cupola. The paratroops were unaware that its ammunition lift was not working, but the guns started to turn menacingly. Meanwhile, another team had blown out the steel door of the northern cupola, killing the Belgians inside. Further explosions rocked the cupola, silencing it for good. The only weapons now capable of threatening the paratroops on the fort were the heavy machine guns in their 2 emplacements. The paratroops, with the task of capturing them, had landed in barbed wire. Sergeant Wenzel and his men silenced the guns in the northern emplacement before discovering that the southern one was empty. It was only now that the paratroops realized their commander Witzig was missing. Their superb training meant that even his absence had not prevented the main Belgian gun emplacements threatening the Maastricht bridges being knocked out in less than 20 minutes. In the meantime, the other groups had landed near the bridges, 2 of which were captured intact. A vigilant Belgian soldier had detonated the explosives on the bridge at Cannes. The operation achieved a remarkable success. With the loss of just 42 men, mostly at Cannes, a bridgehead across the northern bridges had been secured within an hour. But the battle for Aben Amel was not over yet. Belgian soldiers were still inside the fortress and fighting back. At 6:30 a.m., a lone glider swooped in. Lieutenant Witzig had finally arrived at the fortress, having commandeered another aircraft. Resuming command, he ordered another attack on the 2 still intact cupolas. His men rushed to the central 120mm gun position and placed a hollow charge explosive on top of it. Although the explosion failed to penetrate the thick armor, the cupola stopped moving. Only the southern 75mm gun cupola was still functioning. But despite exploding a 110-pound hollow charge on its armored dome, the paratroops were unable to silence it. Inside the cupola, Belgian troops managed to get its deadly guns operating again. And at 10:30, started firing on the German advance. It was precisely what the Germans had feared most. A bridge across the River Meuse was destroyed, and the advance delayed for 24 hours while engineers built a replacement pontoon bridge. In desperation, Captain Koch called in Stuka dive bombers to strike the cupola repeatedly. Other Belgian fortresses began shelling the roof of Aben Amel to dislodge the paratroops still there. Some 1,200 shells landed, wounding many of the Germans hiding in the captured gun emplacements. By nightfall, the morale of the Belgian soldiers inside the fortress was plummeting. The following morning, German troops used anti-tank guns to blast their way through the main gate of the fortress, while others used assault boats to cross the Albert Canal below the fortress. Eventually, the Belgian commander surrendered, and a white flag was waved at the fortress's main entrance. The battle was over. Within 18 days, Belgium had surrendered. It was a brilliant victory for Hitler's special forces, and he honored every man involved with the Iron Cross. They had more than proved their courage and skill. Hitler now felt greatly encouraged to consider an even more challenging operation, an aerial assault on an entire island. In April 1941, following a coup by pro-Allied Air Force officers in Yugoslavia, Hitler attacked both Yugoslavia and Greece.